In 2017, a remotely operated camera descended 18,000 feet into the Philippine Sea and found a pair of boots sitting perfectly upright in the sediment. Nobody has touched them. Nobody legally can. Their owner went down with the USS Indianapolis in July 1945, and the ship has been sitting on the ocean floor ever since. Found, identified, and permanently beyond reach. That is not the strange part. The strange part is that for 72 years, nobody went looking. Not because the location was unknown, not because the ocean refused to give up its secret, but because of a single clerical decision made before the ship even left port. One that effectively made the Indianapolis invisible to its own navy. 880 men floated in shark-infested water for 4 days before anyone noticed they were gone. The ship had just delivered the components for the Hiroshima bomb. It completed the most important mission of the entire war. Then it disappeared into silence. Paul Allen's research vessel, RV Petrel, located the wreck in August 2017, using declassified naval routing records that had been available for years. The ship lies at approximately 5,500 meters, deeper than any standard military salvage operation, deeper than any recreational dive, deeper than any recovery protocol ever designed to reach. ROV footage from the 2017 expedition captured brass nameplates still legible on the hull, telegraph machinery still mounted in place. Those boots, upright in the sediment, undisturbed for 8 decades. The wreck is visible. It is identifiable. The cameras can see everything. But the hull is broken into 2 major sections with debris scattered across miles of seafloor, and an estimated 300 or more crew members remain inside what is left of it. That changes everything about what the wreck is and what can ever be done with it. The answer to why it took 72 years to be found begins not in the Pacific, but in a routing office in California. The Indianapolis had been classified as a non-reporting vessel for its final voyage. Its arrival at Leyte Gulf in the Philippines was not required to be formally logged. No automatic alert mechanism existed to flag a missing ship. When the Indianapolis failed to appear on schedule, 3 separate officers received notification of its non-arrival. None of them escalated it. The post-war formal inquiry confirmed all 3 knew and did nothing. For 4 days, approximately 880 survivors drifted in open water, drinking seawater, dying of exposure, and being attacked repeatedly by oceanic white-tip sharks in what remains the longest mass shark attack in recorded history. A patrol aircraft spotted them by chance on August 2, 1945. By then, only 316 men were still alive. The Navy's official explanation cited wartime communication breakdown, and that explanation is not entirely wrong, but it conceals something more deliberate, because the Indianapolis had been carrying something so secret that the Navy, in the aftermath, had strong institutional reasons to keep its route obscure. The Indianapolis had just completed the most classified cargo delivery of the Second World War. It transported uranium-235 and critical assembly components for Little Boy, the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, from San Francisco to the island of Tinian in the Mariana Islands. The mission was so sensitive that crew members were forbidden from discussing where they had been or what they had carried. When Japanese submarine I-58, under Commander Mochitsura Hashimoto, struck the ship with 2 torpedoes on the night of July 30th, 1945, and the Indianapolis sank in approximately 12 minutes, the secrecy surrounding its route made honest accounting almost impossible. Explaining the 4-day delay in rescue would have required explaining the mission. That created pressure to suppress the procedural failures rather than expose them. Some historians describe this as informal and institutional rather than formally coordinated. Others point to what happened next as evidence the Navy chose to protect itself by sacrificing its own captain. Captain Charles McVeigh III was court-martialed in late 1945 for hazarding his vessel by failing to zigzag. He became the only American naval captain court-martialed for losing a ship to enemy action during the entire Second World War. The proceeding contained a detail almost too strange to be believed. The Navy called Commander Hashimoto, the Japanese submarine commander who had sunk the Indianapolis, as a witness for the prosecution. Hashimoto testified that the zigzagging pattern would have made no difference to the outcome of his attack. The court convicted McVeigh regardless. Survivors argued for decades that the conviction was institutional deflection, blame assigned to one man to shield the system that had failed 880 others. Congress passed a resolution exonerating McVeigh posthumously in October 2000. He had been dead for 31 years, having died by suicide in 1968, reportedly driven in part by hate mail from civilians and bereaved families who held him personally responsible. Exoneration came, but the wreck still hadn't been searched. 5,500 meters is not just a depth. At that pressure, exceeding 8,000 pounds per square inch, no standard salvage crane operates. No commercial or military recovery system currently exists that could raise a broken warship from those conditions at any realistic cost. The Indianapolis is not a sealed, liftable object. It is 2 major hull sections plus miles of debris field. Even if the engineering was somehow possible, a more fundamental restriction closes the question entirely. An estimated 300 or more crew members never escaped the ship. Their remains, whatever 8 decades of deep ocean has preserved, are inside that wreckage. Under United States law and established military policy, the site is formally protected as a military grave. Deliberate disturbance is prohibited. The 2017 expedition operated under strict non-disturbance protocols. The cameras could look at those boots in the sediment, the brass nameplates, the personal belongings resting exactly where they settled in 1945. Nothing could be touched. The wreck is simultaneously found and permanently sealed. The hull is not sitting still. Steel corrodes at that depth slowly, but it corrodes without pause. Marine engineers genuinely disagree on the timeline. Some argue the cold temperature and extreme pressure actually slow decay significantly, while others point to specific bacterial corrosion processes that accelerate metal loss in ways that remain poorly understood at that depth. The disagreement is real and unresolved. What is not in dispute is that the structure is changing, and no institution is formally monitoring it. There is also the question of fuel. The Indianapolis carried oil in sealed compartments when it went down, and by most estimates, some of that oil remains inside the wreck today. If hull deterioration eventually breaches those compartments, the release could affect a major Pacific fishing and shipping corridor. The Philippine Sea above the wreck is active water, yet no environmental agency has established a monitoring program for the site. The wreck sits in international waters with ambiguous jurisdictional oversight, found, designated, and watched by nobody. For more than 5 decades after the sinking, survivors gathered in annual reunions. These were not ceremonial events. For many of the men, they were the only space in which what they had lived through could be spoken about honestly, among the only people who already understood. When the wreck was located in 2017, the discovery coincided closely with what became the last formal survivor reunion. Edgar Harrell, one of the final living survivors at the time, said that finding the ship felt like closing a circle that had been open for 72 years. But the circle did not fully close. The wreck cannot be visited. It cannot be physically marked. No memorial can be placed above it, because nothing can reach it. The official memorial exists in Indianapolis, Indiana, on land, thousands of miles from where the ship and the men actually are. The survivors spent half a century needing proof that what they endured was real. The ocean held that proof longer than most of them lived. The Philippine Sea today shows nothing. Calm surface water, normal shipping traffic, no marker, no buoy, no visible trace. 18,000 feet below, 2 broken hull sections rest in the sediment, personal effects scattered across miles of dark ocean floor, roughly 300 men still inside. The Navy formally designated the site a sunken military craft in 2019, a legal protection, but not an active one. There is no monitoring program, no corrosion survey, no institution watching the sealed fuel compartments for signs of breach. The Indianapolis carried the weapon that ended the Second World War. It completed its mission in full. It was never designed to survive what came after, and it did not. What remained sank in 12 minutes, and has been on the ocean floor for 80 years. The boots in the sediment are still upright. The water above them shows nothing. That is exactly what the ocean does with things it decides to keep.